I'm Barbara Lucas, and welcome to the Green Room, where we explore the environmental topics that green up our world. We're going to be talking about a pollutant that can be very serious and can be found right in our own homes. In fact, right in our medicine cabinets, mercury. We're here today with Jeff Krcmarik, Supervisor in Washtenaw County's Environmental Health Division, which oversees the Home Toxics Program and the small mercury response in Washtenaw County. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Barbara.
Jeff, usually when I think about mercury in our environment, I think of what comes out of the smokestacks in coal-fired power plants and comes down in the atmosphere into our lakes and gets into our fish, and I think of that source. But what is it about our medicine cabinets that we need to be concerned about?
Well, that's right. There's 60% of our energy comes from coal-fired plants. So you're right. A lot of energy use does lead to mercury pollution. However, in our medicine cabinets, we have mercury thermometers, fever thermometers, that can be a source of a contaminant inside your house.
And why is it that we're so concerned about thermometers, being that there's really just a small amount, like a gram or something, and you've got blood pressure cuffs that have so much more, or also your thermostats in your homes? Why the concern about the thermometers?
Mercury thermometers have been around for many years, and people still have them in their medicine cabinets. They contain about 500 milligrams of mercury, which is a considerable amount, and if you were to break it inside your bathroom, then, or in a bedroom, you would need to immediately clean it up to make sure that any off-gassing doesn't occur, because it is a potent neurotoxin.
And how can you tell if your thermometer is mercury or not?
Well, usually on the bulb end of the thermometer, there's going to be a silver tip. If it's not mercury, it'll be alcohol-based. It'll be blue or red.
Are they still selling these mercury ones? Can you still get them?
In certain areas of the country and Michigan, you can. The sale of mercury thermometers have been banned in the city of Ann Arbor for quite some time now.
Well, I know that when I was raising my kids, I still had mercury thermometers, and I accidentally broke 2 of them. And I guess because I was always shaking down the thermometer trying to get the mercury down, and they fly out of your hands, the next thing you know, it's broken on the tile floor, and it can be quite a mess. I'm wondering the issue of children. I know that pregnant women and children should not be around mercury, especially. Why is that?
Well, it's a potent neurotoxin, and children under 5 have developing brains. A neurotoxin will compromise their neurological development, and the same goes for women and women of childbearing years and the children that they may be carrying. It'll be compromising their neurological development.
So I guess the first thing is to make sure you get everybody out. I mean, children love mercury. They love to play with it. Animals, I've got a dog that loves to be in the middle of everything, and I just cringe thinking of him getting his paws in it and tracking it all over. Why is it that they say the first thing you have to do is isolate it?
Isolate it because you cannot smell it, or you can see it pretty well with a flashlight, but you got to make sure nobody's going to be tracking it throughout the house and causing a major issue. And that's what has happened on several spills in Michigan, where mercury has been spilled, it's been carried around, taken home, or goes from room to room or room to car, or vice versa, and contaminates a whole broad area versus an isolated area.
And if you're not sure whether you may have accidentally stepped in it, what should you do, the area that you're not sure about?
Well, you definitely want to isolate it, make sure nobody walks in that area. If you think you may have walked in it, take those shoes or socks or whatever you had on off, put them in a bag, and put them in the garage away from anybody that's living in the house. But you want to make sure that you isolate and cover, like for example, if it was carpeting, put plastic on top of it, and same thing with the floor of the bathroom.
And can you then call someone and ask them to come out and find the mercury for you if you've looked and you can't find it but you're not sure?
Yes, if you call 1-800-POISON-1, that's poison control. They're well versed in mercury response for small spills such as this, which are quite common. And they will direct you to your local health department here in Washtenaw County. It'll come to us, usually our department, and then we come out and talk to the folks and find out what the extent of the spill is.
And is there some special tool that you use to find the mercury?
We do have access. We're lucky here in Washtenaw County to have a Lumex or methylmercury vapor gas detector. What happens is elemental mercury is inside the thermometer, and when elemental mercury falls into your carpeting or onto the floor, it mixes with bacteria and forms methylmercury. And our detector can identify those locations. For example, if it was in a carpeting or on a floor where you can't see it that well, or if it goes into a crack in the floor, like a wooden floor, or if it goes down your drain of your sink, because it can accumulate down there also.
Gosh, what if you get it in your trap? It seems like it could collect there and then just keep emitting as you...
That's correct, especially if it's a stainless steel or a metallic trap. It'll amalgamate. It'll combine with the metals that are in the environment, the mercury will, and it'll stay there. And when we have checked homes where they have done that, where they have spilled it down the drain, the trap has been needed to be removed, because if you put your face down near the sink, you'll be inhalating the mercury vapors.
And I often hear don't sweep and don't vacuum if you have a spill. Why is that so important?
Well, what happens, like I just said about amalgamation, is that once you suck it up with a vacuum cleaner, you can remove it from the floor, but any metallic parts in your vacuum cleaner, the mercury will bond to that metal, and it'll be exhausting. The exhaust will contain mercury vapors, exposing the whole house. I've been to a home before where they cleaned up a spill with a vacuum cleaner. In July, they called me out 3 months later for some reason to make sure it was clean, and their vacuum had still been emitting mercury vapors for all those months, and so they were still being exposed. And a broom, what can happen is you'll push it with a broom, and it'll bust it up into many, many little beads, and it'll be much harder to find. So we want to keep the brooms and the vacuum cleaners out of the spill site.
Oy, sounds a little intimidating. Do you think it would just be advisable to tell people to call hazmat and let them deal with it?
No, generally speaking, most homeowners have what they need to take care of it themselves. If they're not quite sure, they can call 1-800-MI-TOXIC, that's MITOXIC, and that's the Michigan Department of Community Health, and they have experts there that can also help you through a cleanup spill. But generally speaking, a thermometer or less, it's pretty much, it could be handled by the homeowner.
And is it with things that you normally have around the house?
Yes, 3x5 cards. You need to have gloves, eye protection. You need a flashlight to find it, and you need to be able to pick it up with the cards and put it into a plastic bag or a plastic container, and then put that container inside another plastic bag to make sure it doesn't break once again and spill anywhere after you clean it up.
So basically you just need protection, you need something to pick it up with, something to put it into, and your flashlight to
Right, it's
see
highly
it.
reflective. It's easy to find the smallest spots in the carpeting or on the floor, and also tape works really well. Using cellophane tape or duct tape, you can pad it up with those two items and put it into the bag also. Those are pretty effective methods.
So everybody's got those kind of things around the house. You don't need a specific 3x5 card, you just need anything stiff, right?
Correct. As you'll see in the video, we just used box tops from cereal boxes that can be used.
Yeah, so let's show this little movie that we put together that is going to give us the basics of how to clean up a small mercury spill. Mercury is found in many household products, including thermostats and thermometers. Mercury is silver, not red. Use alternatives to mercury products such as digital thermometers and thermostats. If a spill occurs, number 1, immediately evacuate the spill area by removing children and pets. If you think someone may have stepped in it, cover that area with plastic. Close the door to keep the mercury vapors contained in the room. Turn off your heat or AC so the mercury vapors don't spread throughout your ductwork. Ventilate the room by opening a window or turning on an exhaust fan. If the spill is large, more than 2 tablespoons, then report the spill.
6942.
Whatever you do, do not use a broom or vacuum. It will only spread the mercury and make matters worse. Instead,
We have eye protection safety glasses, various types of gloves, rubber or vinyl, duct tape, non-breakable plastic containers preferable, a flashlight to help find the mercury beads, eyedropper to help lift the mercury beads, 2 cards of box top, perhaps 3x5 cards, to scrape the mercury on top and put into the container, and also a bag so we can put the container inside the bag for secondary containment.
Remove jewelry, put on gloves and safety glasses. Inspect the area with a flashlight. Pick up the mercury droplets with index cards, tape, or an eyedropper. Transfer the droplets and materials to a plastic container. Seal the container and put it into a secondary container. Label the container clearly. If mercury comes in contact with cloth items, they should be securely bagged and discarded in the trash. If you find any mercury has been tracked out of the spill area onto carpet, the carpet and padding should be removed a foot around the mercury. Discard these items and the plastic covering in a fresh plastic bag. When cleanup is completed, wash hands thoroughly. For more information, call your local health department.
Unfortunately, the movie is really short and it doesn't give us all the information we need, but we'll talk about all the rest of the stuff right now because, for instance, clothing. What should you do about clothing?
Right. If the spill directly occurs on your pants or on your shirt or any clothing whatsoever, take those articles off and put it in a plastic bag and put it outside. Call your local health department on disposal options. We have disposal options here in Washtenaw County. And then when you go to clean up the spill, wear some clothes that you don't care that get dirty or get thrown away, because once it gets inside the fabric of the clothes, you do not want to put it in your clothes washer, because it'll contaminate your washer and continue the problem of mercury vapors inside your home.
So it'd probably be especially important to put on some old shoes before you start, because people don't usually like to throw away their shoes.
Exactly, old shoes, and just make sure you've identified the spill and just don't walk it in the first place and you're all set.
And what about turning off the heat and the air conditioning? Why do they say that's important?
We don't want any we don't want any circulation of that air that may be contaminated with mercury, methyl mercury. We don't want it circulating throughout the house. If you have an intake near that room to your furnace, you could be distributing it throughout your house. So we want to make sure any forced air, heating or cooling, is closed off. If you have outside ventilation, for example, a window or a fan, please turn those on or open the windows up, and that will help ventilate the area.
But only if they're going outside.
That's correct. Nothing recirculating inside the house.
Okay. And the movie talks about taking off jewelry. Why is that so?
Well, it's metallic once again. For example, my wedding ring is very hard to take off. That's why we recommend gloves. But watches, bracelets, anything like that, if it was to come in contact, the mercury would stick to it or combine with it, and you might lose your jewelry because it'll be contain mercury, or elemental mercury.
Plus, you can't see it necessarily. Those beads are so small, you wouldn't even know it got in there. So
that's correct.
Which means it's especially important to have some gloves around the house. Now, the movie shows several types. Is there certain types that are better than others?
Anything that's non-porous. Make sure they're not cotton or wool or any other type of porous fabric. Make sure they're rubber, vinyl, nitrile, latex. Anything like that would work fine, so it won't be absorbed into the skin.
Okay. And the movie shows using the flashlight, which I found amazing when we made the movie, how much we could see. First we thought we had them all the little beads, and then you got out the flashlight and lo and behold there were all kinds of tiny, tiny little beads that we'd missed. And I would think it'd be extremely important to, especially if you accidentally used a broom, to check all the nooks and crannies of your area, because that flashlight can really...
Right, and I've been to homes before where it has fallen between the cracks of wooden floors.
Oh, wow.
And that can be especially hard to remove or isolate. And you're correct, any gaps in your tiling of your floor, it can get down in there. You need to check those spots.
Because you can't smell it and you can't see it, so you don't know it's there.
That's right.
So you should have fresh batteries around the house, because I'm always, every time I need a flashlight, I don't have a working one, so that would be an important thing to have handy. The movie shows putting the mercury into a small plastic canister and then into a Ziploc bag and then into a Tupperware container. Do you have to have those specific things around the house?
No, just make sure they're non-porous and they're not breakable, no glass. And then once you collect it, you can bring it to our home toxics collection site on Zeeb Road. We do accept mercury in that state.
Mm-hmm. So basically the concept is to double, triple contain it, and it doesn't matter so much.
And you don't want to spill it on the way to the drop-off because it can really damage a car. There's been instances before, spills, where people have been traveling with larger amounts, not a mercury thermometer, but larger amounts, spilled it in the car, or a bus, for example, that has happened, and they cannot even get it out and have had to just demolish the vehicle.
Well, and keep it out of the hands of children, too, because they're like, oh, what's this in the bag that's specially contained?
Right, exactly. Put danger warning.
Yeah, keep it away from them. So I think we've pretty much gone through all the basics. Where can people get more information about this?
Well, they can go to our website, www.ewashtenaw.org/mercury. We have a lot of information on that website and links to other websites to answer any other questions that you may have.
Okay, great. There's something else in my in my bathroom, above my medicine cabinet, that has mercury in it, and that is the fluorescent bulbs that are in my vanity light. Now, how does that compare to the amount of mercury that's in a thermometer?
An average thermometer contains about 500 milligrams of elemental mercury. A fluorescent CFL, the curly light bulbs, contain between 3 and 5 milligrams. So it has about 100 times less mercury, and also that mercury is bound to the phosphorus inside the glass. We have we have measured the methylmercury vapors off from a broken compact fluorescent light, and it is very, very, very small or negligible. We can't barely read it at all.
So why is it that they're concerned about a spill? I mean, it must be enough that they still want you to treat it carefully,
well,
right?
again, if you went out there with a vacuum cleaner or and sucked up any of the glass in your vacuum cleaner, again, the mercury inside those bulbs can amalgamate to the metallic parts, and if you do that enough, you're going to contaminate your vacuum cleaner. So you still don't want to do that. You want to clean up the glass, everything that you can, put it in another baggie. Also, you can use tape to get any glass particles, because most of the time it just sticks with the glass, the broken glass. Very little's bit released with the small amount that there is in the break, and then once it's all cleaned up with tape, you're good to go.
And you'd still want to double bag it?
Double bag it. You can bring it into, well, actually you can throw it in the trash.
Okay.
It's such a small amount.
Okay. And if it doesn't break, if it's simply burned out, I've heard it's important to recycle them, right?
Right. Check with local retailers like Home Depot and Lowe's. They have facilities for people to recycle their compact fluorescent lights. I believe they want them bagged. Now the tubes, the long tubes, contain much more mercury than a compact fluorescent light, but still a small amount, 20 to 30 milligrams of elemental mercury. So those places will not accept the tubes. They're just too hard to handle.
Those things rattle around in my car when I try to take them around. You had a good tip for me. You had said get the box, but I didn't have a box, so you said to use rubber bands to contain.
Well, if you buy them in large quantities, usually you can just put them back into the box that they came in, keep the box, don't throw it out in the first place when you buy the new bulbs. But if you don't have the box, take duct tape and tape them together, because they're round, they'll roll off a table, they'll roll off your car. By taping them together, it makes it a lot harder for them to break accidentally. And then bring them into the drop-off station on Ellsworth Road or to the Home Toxics Reduction Collection Facility on Zeeb Road.
Okay. Some people are a little nervous about using fluorescent lights because of this issue, but I've heard that the amount of mercury that's emitted by an incandescent light, excuse me, it's not emitted by the incandescent light, it's emitted by the coal-fired power plant, right? It's still less.
That's correct. It's 3 times more mercury is being emitted by using the incandescent light from the coal-fired plants that we have here in the Michigan area. versus the compact fluorescent light, and especially if the compact fluorescent light is not broken, you're having no exposure at all. So you're reducing the amount of mercury actually in the environment by using a compact fluorescent light.
Okay. And even if you do have a break, the health threat, is that a lot we need to worry about, the touching it or breathing it, whether it be a thermometer or a CFL, compared to the bioaccumulation in terms of eating fish? What is it that we really need to worry about?
Well, the most common place that we get mercury is the fish that we eat. We can control the spill, we can control our diet, but and it's very healthy to eat fish once in a while, but it's also important to understand that that's probably your major source of mercury in your environment is the fish that you eat.
Yeah, there's these fish advisories. Where can people find those for sports fishing?
The FDA has a website with a fish advisory for the whole United States, and they identify which state has a hazard level or advisory level. Also, when you buy your fishing license in Michigan, there's a whole section on advising you what fish you can eat from what waters. So there's different pollutants for different areas of our state. Mercury, though, is ubiquitous. It's unfortunately, once it goes airborne, it can land anywhere. So mercury is pretty much blanketed across the United States and Michigan in terms of what the advisory is.
Okay. Now, getting that advisory, I think, is on the Washtenaw County web page as well, right?
That's correct. We also placed it there.
Okay, good. When you cook the fish, can you trim off the fat to get the mercury out, or can you grill
No,
it?
actually, there's no way to change that. Once it's in the fish, you cannot cook it out. You cannot use a preferred method to reduce your exposure, unfortunately. So.
All right, so I guess it's important to think about how often you eat the fish and whether or not you're of childbearing, a woman of childbearing age. I do know that when I was pregnant 25 years ago, I craved tuna, and unfortunately I craved albacore tuna and ate a lot of it, and then back in 2004 found out the FDA is advising women of childbearing age not to eat, or not to eat much of it anyway.
Right. It's bioaccumulative in fish. So the bigger the fish, the older the fish, the more likely it's to accumulate, tends to accumulate in those fish. So it's larger predatory fish. In the Great Lakes, it would be like walleye or bass or pike or catfish. So those are the types of fish that most likely that grow old or grow big, eat other fish, and that accumulation kind of peaks out at the larger fish. And then for ocean-going fish, you mentioned tuna. There's also shark, swordfish that are also in those advisory.
Would albacore be a bigger fish than the other types of tuna?
I believe so. I believe it's one of the larger tunas out there.
Yeah, unfortunately for me. It's the one I like the best. Then there's the whole issue of wildlife. I know that we've been concentrating on how it affects people. But there's all kinds of animals out there that eat fish, right?
That's correct. And once the mercury is deposited in the lake, it works into the food chain. So anything that eats little fish, like diving ducks, loons, any terrestrial animal that relies on fish in their diet, are all getting some levels of mercury inside their body from eating those fish.
Loons are kind of threatened anyway. Their population, I guess, avian botulism or something's affecting them, so all they need is to be eating fish with mercury in them.
Right, we don't want to compromise them any further.
Sounds like there's a lot of reasons to try to limit our consumption of electricity that relies on coal-fired power plants. A lot of reasons to be thinking about what we might have in our homes that contains mercury. A lot of reasons to know how to clean up these spills in case there, is an accident. I'm really glad that you were here today to help us sort some of that out. It's an important topic.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yep. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. If you'd like to view this show online, go to ewashtenaw.org/greenroom. Thanks for joining us today in the Green Room.